it's a little on the seedy side. I'm going to refer to Mickey Rourke and Wild Orchid. I'll never understand why that movie was so panned by the critics because, quite frankly, it really resembled a part of life that I experienced with very, very dear, successful friends. In particular, I'm going to talk about Ronnie Harding. This man was brilliant, absolutely genius. Marketing, advertising, he could do no wrong. He, in 1965, 66, somewhere around there, he took a warehouse and turned it into a studio apartment that was so ahead of its time that he made the New York's prestigious magazine of Architectural Digest. Our relationship was of adopted sister, let's put it that way. He took a special parental something to me. I was sick all the time, crippling all the time. And he started to take care of me. He hated the way I was being treated by friends and family. And he saw what I didn't see, truthfully, at the time. And because of my disease, Parkinsonism, which had no diagnosis at the time, I was extremely sensitive to heat and sun. He started to take me everywhere. He'd have a date to go to the movies, and he'd say, "Trudy, I'm picking you up, you're coming." Everywhere I went with him, he whether he had a date or not, he rented a huge mansion up on Sutton, in Sutton, which is south of Barrie, Ontario, on Lake Simcoe. And he got a group of young executive men, gorgeous, talented, brilliant guys together, and they all rented it, as well as a mansion in Rosedale. He was so ahead of his time. And because I am always sick spring, summer, fall, and the only time I was good was in the winter. I've been like that since I'm 5 years old. So now I'm about 24, 25, 26 years old. So he would take me for the weekends to this place in Sutton. And give an example, one time I was out swimming and I had an inner tube and I was just hanging out in the water. I just loved the coolness of the cold water. Cold always made the pain in my body and brain go down. All of a sudden, he starts screaming at me, "Trudy, get your butt in here. You know what's going to happen. You're going to take a heat stroke." And no, I want to stay out here. I'm really enjoying myself. I'm okay. And he comes flying into the water and he grabbed me in his arms and he picked me up like a rag doll and he carried me into the house and he laid me down on the sofa and he said, "Now you be quiet for a half an hour. I'm going to time you. You're not going to move because you're going to get sick." And he was right. When I stayed out in the sun, I got heat stroke and I'd be sick, really sick. And I'd pass out, in fact, sometimes. So just an example. And after work, I'd come. I was working at the stock market and at the time, and different places downtown Toronto, and I'd drop in at his apartment, which is rooftop of this factory, and like a penthouse, except it was a factory. And he'd say, "Did you eat today?" "I'll eat later." "No, you sit down." And he'd make me a fresh salad with beautiful fruit and everything. Anyway, to make a long story short, somewhere along the line, he started mixing a drug, don't know what, he would never tell me what it was, and alcohol. And like the character that Mickey Rourke played, he began to become sexually deviant, for lack of a better word, or self-destructive. He married the woman he was madly in love with, and for some reason, he couldn't make it on the honeymoon, and he forced her to divorce him immediately or get an annulment. And I kept saying to him, "You're doing something. You're taking drugs. There's too much alcohol. It's bound to affect how your," as my grandmother used to say, "your kamasava behaves." And he wouldn't believe me, and I was sure that's what was causing all these problems. And he spiraled into this sexual whatever, I don't know what, women coming and going, a long string of broken hearts. And decades later, my disease took me down so that I could no longer read or write, lost my memory. And I went to say goodbye to Toronto, to everything that I had loved and all the people I had known that I loved, and they were all gone. And many of them died in similar circumstances of drugs and alcohol. One guy I knew at a party on Park Plaza Hotel, he said, "Hey, Trudy, I'm a bird, I can fly," and he literally jumped off the roof right in front of me. I'll never forget that. There was so many like that. They completely self-destructed. A brilliant young hairdresser. He went into sexual games and drugs and alcohol, and it fried his brain, and he wound up in an institution, a vegetable. But Ronnie in particular was the most sad of all. It took him so much longer to kill himself, so much longer. Anyway, I'm saying goodbye, and I went to Melanie's bar, and he's standing there, and he gave me a big hug. And I had decided to go into AA, that even though I knew that my condition was terminal and I was dying, trying to kill myself with alcohol wasn't working. I had literally, that's what I had tried to do. I tried to drink myself to death, and it didn't work, and I wound up trying to drive my car off a cliff, and it stalled 3 feet from the edge, and a whole lot of visions and weird things were happening. And one of them in particular made it a vision, whether I was hallucinating, I don't know, doesn't matter. Made it very clear that I had a job to do on this planet, and I had to stay alive somehow and research my disease and stop screwing around trying to kill myself. Yeah, kind of like that. Anyway, he was so glad that I had joined AA, and I was going to try and stay clean and stay sober, something he hadn't been able to do. And he said to me he didn't have long to live. And what I remember most about him is, just like the character in Wild Orchid, he had spiraled into such an insane world of sex that was completely self-destructive. There was a long, long line of women whose hearts he broke, not intentionally, but he was just so mentally deranged and sick and destructive. But here was a wonderful, good soul that just couldn't make it, couldn't climb out of that, whatever you call it, that dark cavern that we fall into when life plays us dirty tricks. But anyhow, I kind of wanted to point out that Wild Orchid to me was one of the most magnificent movies ever made on that part of life that goes on every day in the stock market, in real estate, in the business world, the world that I was in for 23 years. And I watched an awful lot of beautiful, gorgeous men, just like Mickey Rourke was in that character, destroy themselves and the people around them and the women around them. Just completely self-destructive. So that's my topic today, is Wild Orchid is an amazing film, and I don't know why the critics hated it, because it was real. It was dead on to the kind of things that really do happen in society. Over and out. I'm going skiing in a few hours, so closing down.